not on. My microphone was not on. My microphone was not turned on. My microphone was not turned on. Oh, where is my microphone? Oh, there it is. I forgot to turn on the phantom power, and it took a while to warm up. Okay, hi, hello, hi. I'm the Amelia one. My pronouns are she, they. This is FSP Live, Fridays at 4 Eastern. I'm here to answer questions and talk about Murderbot and maybe sing songs. And Robyn is our mod in the chat. Hello, Robyn. How are you doing? I'm going to talk about Murderbot as relates to our last episode of the Feminist Survival Project, which was about neuroplastic pain. Because there are some assumptions about how cognition works in Murderbot that Martha Wells does not get so specific about, like, things. But the series writers have gone and like done some things that kind of have these underlying assumptions about how cognition works. I want to take, for example, music cognition is really complicated. And so Murderbot sings in this episode, and it's unique and special. First of all, interesting that last week I was just talking about some TV theme songs have motivic uh, content, motivic themes, and some have melodic themes. And we get a TV theme song within a TV show. Murderbot has a motivic theme, and Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon has a melodic theme, and they're very different shows, so that makes a lot of sense. And also, it's clearly supposed to suggest a show that's kind of old-fashioned, right? So, like, the style of music within a show, using our cultural references for understanding how music works, then tells us something about how that show functions in the context of Murderbot's universe. So the Sanctuary Moon theme song, I didn't check what exact key it's in, but I did check to see that when Murderbot starts singing the Sanctuary Moon theme song, he is not even close to the same key. Not even close. And that's really interesting because that's like a thing that a typical average person would do. Especially in the West, we tend to think about pitch as relative, so that once we have a scale, we can copy that pattern of that scale at starting at any pitch, which is what Murderbot does with that. He doesn't sing it in the same scale with the same tonic as the original one. He sings it starting on a different note, and that's still recognizable to us as the same song. But it didn't have to be that way. The people who programmed Murderbot didn't have to give him specific pitch recognition. They could have given him only the basics of up and down without being able to discern specific pitches. That would have been enough, probably, to be able to infer emotional content from speech, was just to have enough pitch sensory processing to comprehend up and down. Or they could have been more specific and only given him access to analyze specific pitches. Like birds, for example, at least some birds I know for sure, definitely have only pitch specific sensory processing. So that if you go, a little bird goes, that means a thing to the other birds. And when the other birds listen to this, they hear a thing that maybe means something to them. But if they hear this, that does not mean the same thing, because this and follow the same pattern. They're a half step apart. This note is a half step above this note, and this note is a half step above this note. And we can hear that as the same interval, just translated as starting from a different pitch, transposed. But birds, for example, will not hear that this is the same pattern. They will hear these as completely different pieces of information. So the creators of Murderbot and of security units in general, I assume, decided that no, Murderbot's not going to have like a perfect pitch kind of understanding of the world where it's going to hear, only this pitch is this pitch. It's going to be able to hear patterns and transpose. And that is a pretty complicated way of understanding pitch. Um, so I thought that was interesting that the writers probably didn't think twice about this. They just let Murderbot be a creature that had the same kind of pitch processing capacity and pitch reproducing capacity as a human. Which is the same kind of, I think, default method of understanding how cognition works that they applied to pain sensing. Now, we talked about in the last episode of FSP neuroplastic pain, which is, it's kind of how they used to talk about psychosomatic pain. Psycho meaning mind, soma meaning body, psychosomatic mind body pain, like as though the mind is not embodied, right? So the idea of psychosomatic pain or stress induced pain used to be kind of a way that people assumed they meant, oh, the pain is all in your head, which they translated as meaning you're imagining it, which is not what that means. But when we see how the writers of the Murderbot series, and even Martha Wells, she does talk about pain sensors. And that's really interesting because they're talking about pain as though it exists, whether or not the sensory process exists. And that's not accurate. Pain is a result of a sensory process. So, and we know this because there are people whose sensory process is broken and they don't feel pain. And this is a very dangerous condition to have because you can hurt yourself and not know it. Something can be wrong, you can be sick, you could be injured, and you won't get help because you don't know that it's happening. So, sensory processing is what creates pain. Your nervous system invented pain to tell you, hey, something's wrong. So the idea that you would create a bot constructed hybrid creature and give it a pain sensing system makes sense because it's not really sensing pain. What it's sensing is damage. So a damage sensing system might use, like, it's the way that it shows up to give the information to the thing that's experiencing damage might be pain or just like an unpleasant experience. It could be, and I think it makes a lot more sense that if you're going to program a construct, you wouldn't give it pain, you would give it a readout that says, here's the damage, here's the damage, here's the damage. And not, especially if its job was to go into danger and to take damage for the people it is trying to protect, that it should not have a pain a pain system, a sensory processing system that creates an unpleasant experience. What you should do is, have it be a readout. These are the things that are wrong. This is the operating parameters, and this is the whatever. But the idea of having pain sensors as though pain exists without the sensory system and that you can turn down the pain sensors so that you can not sense the pain and then the pain still exists but you're not sensing it, that just doesn't make any sense. But it is true that you can reduce your experience of pain because pain is a sensory processing. It's a sensory process, a sensory processing result. It's a thing that results from sensory processing. I don't know how to put it. Sorry. But it's very hard to talk about. Sorry. Um, but the point is that, like, say you, for example, burn your hand, and here's my hand, and do you see how the skin is kind of modeled right there? That is my, thank you, noeception. Thanks, Emily. Noeception is the sensory processing thing. So here's my hand, and that modeled patch right there is the burn scar. And when I burned my hand, it hurt. But I had already been practicing, like, ways to, um, give myself observational distance from the pain, ways to, like, pay attention to all the other sensory information my body was receiving and, like, just notice this sensation, along with it and not judge it so much as, "Oh, this terrible experience is happening. I have to stop everything I'm doing and only focus on that terrible sensory experience." And, it turns out that you don't have to focus on pain. You don't have to let pain stop you from doing anything, which people know if they've ever experienced pain and then just kept on going anyway, people know that already. But you can kind of make a choice to do that, and by opening your awareness to other sensory information and turning your attention toward other sensory information and changing your perspective on the sensation that is pain. Um, as I told Emily in the episode, when I tried to do that and I couldn't, when really this just kept calling my attention, like, nope, you can't. There's nothing else to pay attention to, just this. I really mean it. This needs your attention. I went and I went back to urgent care a second time and discovered that the thing had been infected. Um, so that's what we talk about when we talk about, pain being neuroplastic versus being caused by tissue damage. Both of those pain experiences were brought about by tissue damage, but one of them was one that I could like just keep going with and exist with and have non-judgment about. Because my nervous system had the capacity to sort of take in other things at the same time. And when it was a real problem, my nervous system gave me the gift of drawing my attention, giving me no choice but to focus on the thing that hurts. Um, I thought it was charming in the episode where he's being healed from the initial wound from the first episode. Um, and he says he has to keep his pain sensors turned up in order to facilitate the healing, which like as a metaphor is great. Like to facilitate healing, you got to be paying attention to the ways that a thing hurts. To like, be curious about that pain. And the anesthesia that he chooses is TV show. And how relatable is it that you're experiencing some kind of pain and to numb that pain, you turn to comforting entertainment. That's yeah, that's how that works. That's 100% how that works. Um, unfortunately, they're putting it in the context of as though, "Oh, look at that funky hair standing up." Anyway, they're putting it in the context of, like, pain sensors as though pain exists without a sensory system. And if it made sense that you give a construct a sensory system that gives it an unpleasant experience as a result of damage instead of just making that thing able to, you know and maybe that's what they mean, is that the thing is able to, like, keep going in the face of an unpleasant experience. It is. Robin has put in the chat an article on nociception. Nociception, sorry. Yes. Okay, great. Emily assumed its meat parts had to include nociception nerve endings. I mean, they built it. They show in the beginning of this episode a factory where they are assembling parts. They get to choose what parts they put in. Did they have to put in nerves? Does it have a gyroscope or a cerebellum? Does it have how does Murderbot sense its balance is the thing that I was thinking of. How does Murderbot sense its place in space and the size of itself? I don't think the meat parts necessarily had to have nerve endings. And if you have to have nerve endings and you're just going for like a very easy way to just like translate human organic parts onto a human bot construct, then Yeah, maybe you would add then, instead of taking away the nervous system, way of processing sensation that alerts you to damage, then they would just, like, add on top of that sensory system, a computer program, a module that, uh, dials up or down your capacity to your sensitivity to that sensory system, the degree to which you respond to pain. Maybe that's what it is. But the thing is that they just kinda they made a choice, and the choice they went with was just kind of a default. Christine says it feels very much like the writers didn't actually understand that enough to make that distinction. I also think that. I also think that. I think Martha Wells probably did not have any, like, understanding of, nociception and, um the fact that pain exists as a result of a sensory process, and so you could just, like, turn down pain sensors as if the pain would still be there and your perception of it would not. Um, I think I agree. I think that's true. Writers are only experts at writing, nothing else. Absolutely 100%. Um, es Although in the world of sci-fi, there is a trend for authors to be in touch with futurists and people who have an idea of what's coming. And when it comes to constructions of advancements in science, the idea of creating artificial intelligence, which they're never clear that um, Murderbot and Sec units are artificial because they don't call them AI. They do, and actually, further in the series, they do distinguish between AI and constructs. They do distinguish between AI and constructs. Yeah, which is interesting. So, yeah, maybe they are, not calling security units, comfort units, um, AI or bots. Those are distinct kinds of beings in this universe. Robyn says, and even if they are experts, they have to convey ideas to people who aren't experts, which is really hard to 100%, 100%. Yes, that is totally true. One of the great things about sci-fi writing is exploring possibilities of development of technologies into the future or long ago in a galaxy far, far away. The idea of different technologies interacting with or humanity is one of the cool things. And there are a lot of sci-fi writers who don't explain the differences in how their world works, of how the technology works. Um, but it is grounded in more knowledge. Like Andy Weir is a really good example of this, who wrote The Martian and the latest one, which is about somebody going out into the far reaches of space to like find a new planet to live on and ends up communicating with an alien life form. And is really that one in particular is really smart about the differences between a human life form and I am so distracted because there is a turkey in my yard that is honest to God 3.5 feet tall. 3.5 feet tall. It is huge and it's just eating something on my driveway. Very distracting. I'm focused now. So Andy Weir making the distinction between a human person and a turkeys are distracting and an alien thing that is like kind of a sort of a starfish kind of thing and how it speaks and they use a computer to program to translate between them because they're just physically, I mean, they both use language but there's just no like physical possibility and the understanding of like how a non-human organism would communicate, would behave, what kind of society it might come from. Um, that is all very, very thoughtful. I am not a fan of all Andy Weir books. There's one where he tries to write a woman protagonist, and it is bad. My guy needs to stay in his lane. Because the one book he tried to write with a woman protagonist, it was about living on the moon and all the science of living on the moon and like the default understanding of what would happen to a human body if it was born and raised on the moon, right? Of like what it would mean for someone who lives on the moon to be kind of exiled back to Earth, like the consequences that would have on her body are like just the unspoken, like the iceberg of science is what I'm talking about. That's underneath that is really good. And I feel like Martha Weir isn't writing from on top of an iceberg of science. She doesn't have to. But it just means that people like me who like to talk about things like sensory processing and music cognition, we get to talk about the ways that this might imply something about the world that Murderbot is living in, or what the it's coming closer. The turkey approaches. Hello, turkey. Oh, it stopped again. It's fine. It's not coming after me. They're not scary. They're, whatever. Turkeys are wild. Robyn, Binti by Nendi Okorafor has a good alien human communication dynamic. Cool. Love a new sci-fi recommendation. Emily doesn't like sci-fi, but I do, so yay. Okay, so these are the things I wanted to talk about today. Number one, isn't it interesting that the theme song of the in-universe TV show Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon is so different from the theme song of Murderbot the show itself. So like stacked within the theme songception that's going on is very interesting. And that translates specifically to music cognition because Murderbot sings part of that theme song, but he sings it in a different key, and that means that just like default processing, Murderbot's processing of music is like a human processing of music, which again, if they are just defaulting to the organism, to the nervous system, but kind of the point of Murderbot is that it has a really different processing system. It has a different processing capacity, a different it takes in sensory information from external drones. So I don't think they ever had to default to it processing music the same way as people. Turkey update, it's sitting down and just like chilling out in the middle of the driveway, having a nice lie down. That's what the turkey's doing. And second, in terms of like processing and cognition, was the idea of pain sensors, which I think is just a very humany womany kind of understanding of how pain works. Like, wouldn't it be nice if we could just like turn down the knob on our sensing of pain? We could just like, like we turn down the volume on the TV, just to hear less of it, just to take in less of it. It's kind of that wish that is being given to Murderbot. But I think if you were actually designing a Murderbot, you could make the choice not to give it that sensory process. You could improve upon it so that it didn't experience pain as unpleasant. It could just experience pain as information. Experiencing pain as information is a thing that is accessible to people. It takes practice, but I mean, like, this is the like yogis who lie on beds of nails and stuff. This is kind of the thing that gets done in those sort of meditation practices of like distancing yourself from the pain. It's a thing that's accessible to people, and because of the nature of neuroplastic pain, that's how you approach that. So it is possible if you want to like turn down your own pain sensors. It's possible. And when it doesn't work, That's probably your nervous system saying, "Oh, no, this thing really needs your attention. This is damage that needs taking care of." Turkeys are dinosaurs. Having them in your yard feels like Jurassic Park. I mean, it is. It is Jurassic Park. I would like to strip down all of my sensory intake. I mean, that's fair. And when you think about it, people have invented technologies to do just that for hearing, for seeing. I mean, smelling, not so much, except that we have like masks and things. Um, but that's probably not as much of an issue as commonly as sight and sound. Look, we are sight oriented, and sound is the second most sensitive. Our distance sensing things. This is how we sense things first because we sense things from far away with those senses. Smell is for sensing things that are less far away. Um, uh, so turning down the sense on the other senses, taste. Yeah, you just don't put a thing in your mouth, um, or you spit it out, or like, yeah, we don't really have a way of reducing that. Um, so yeah, turning down like the physical touch or the sense of damage of sensory intake, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, but again, you can. It just takes practice, mindfulness, and creating observational distance. I would 1,000,000,000%. There was one in my parking lot that would chase people. Turkeys? Yeah. Is that in Massachusetts, Robyn? Is that in Boston? Because the turkeys in Massachusetts are hardcore. The turkeys in Massachusetts are, I mean, the end of okay, now there's a whole group of them just like chilling and having a little party. I don't think I can like turn my camera around and show you because it's an Elgato face cam, so it's not just like a camera that'll pick up anything. It's set up just to focus on a face. So I cannot show you. But there are just a group of turkeys literally laying down in the driveway. Okay, so that was the new stuff I wanted to talk about related to both the episode of Feminist Survival Project and the episode of Murderbot that happened to be so closely linked today. That they talked so much about pain sensors, and we talked about pain sensory systems. That's the overlap, and that's all the stuff for today, and the being of a person in the world. Yeah. Uh, Christine, I feel like I'm too autistic for mindfulness. I Okay, there are a lot of kinds of meditation. Mindfulness meditation, if you can, for one breath, stay paying attention to that breath you're taking, then you are succeeding at mindfulness meditation. If you can, pick up a thing and then put that thing back down and pay attention to what you are doing the whole time for 3 whole seconds, then you are capable of mindfulness meditation. Does that feel doable? Remind me to conclude gate control theory. Okay. I used to find running and walking outside as close to mindfulness as possible. Okay. So, how I teach mindfulness meditation. Okay. First of all, I don't teach mindfulness meditation, but I use the principles of mindfulness meditation when I conduct choirs. When I lead an ensemble, I teach them explicitly to pay attention to what they are doing while they are doing it, as opposed to like when you get in your car and go to drive home and you get home and you have no memory of the drive home because you did the whole thing on autopilot while thinking about something else and you don't even remember what that thing was. But you did it all on autopilot. Singers can get through whole concerts on autopilot. And that's a very boring concert, in my opinion. When a singer is paying attention to what they are doing while they are doing it, they're in the moment. That's what that means, to be in the moment, is not thinking about the past or the future, not judging what happened, just doing the thing, right? That is mindfulness meditation, and truly, truly every mind in the world, um, that is capable of being in a chat room online is capable of paying attention to what you're doing while you're doing it, even if it's only for 3 seconds. Because if you're capable of doing it for 3 seconds, I'm gonna turn toward my glasses, pick up my glasses, look at my glasses, put my glasses back down, and now I'm looking back at the thing. That is mindfulness, and the more you do that, the better your brain gets at it. Maybe to ADHD. No, ADHD does make this more difficult. It is absolutely more difficult, but it's not impossible. And because this capacity to pay attention to what you are doing while you are doing it is a thing that it creates neuroplastic change. It changes the way your brain works. It increases your capacity to pay attention to what you're doing while you're doing it because it literally reshapes your brain. Now, it just happens to be true that singing in a choir is a kinesthetic experience, a social experience, often a verbal experience, a very it's very much about your balance, and it's also about your entrainment with a group and with the leader of the conductor as an individual. And it's about keeping in time with other people, so it involves so many parts of the brain, is what I'm saying, that when you practice this paying attention to what you're doing while you're doing it through making music, it means that it's affecting all of these different parts of your brain at the same time, which is why learning with music is so effective. That's why you still sing the alphabet song, even though you're 48 years old. When you need to think if Q comes before S, you have to sing it. Because when you learned it, it got carved into your brain using music. And so you're going to carve it out using music. um, so, I mean, if you want a shortcut to like practicing mindfulness meditation, do it while you're making music. They created a new alphabet song. Sing it for me, Robyn. Oh, I can't hear you. Damn. Well, you have to send me a voice note singing it. Then I'm interested. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the other one. The other one's just a German folk song. Do, 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 do. Mozart said it when he was very young. Parents at the circus talked about the new alphabet song. But the idea is that it's set to music. And though, like, can I also say that when I learned the Russian alphabet in high school, when I was studying the Russian language, we learned A, B, V, G, D, E, O, J, Z, I, K, L, M, N, O, P, R, S, T, U, Ch, C, Ch, Ch, L, Вот я знаю алфавит, как красивый он звучит. And that does not mean that that's the alphabet song that Russian kids learn. The alphabet song is a tune by you mean Mozart? It's not by Mozart. It's a German folk song that, like, when I say German, I mean German cultural folk song, um, that Mozart set and used as a theme for fancy doing stuff when he was very, very young. I think he might have even been a juvenile. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is the song, except that it was German. I don't know the German words. Sorry. We're all learning so much today. Um, I never asked my Russian teacher, who was from Russia, do kids in Russia learn the Russian alphabet to this tune? Or have we created this tune? Have we used this tune and kind of like shoved the Russian alphabet to fit into it for American students? I don't know. But she taught it so naturally. Maybe Russian kids do. Maybe Russia has written a new alphabet song also. I don't know. Christine grew up in Austria. First language is German. Yeah, hella blanking on what the yeah. Yeah, à vous dirai-je maman. Yeah, in French. I'm pretty sure it came from Germany though. I might be wrong. Maybe it came from France. I don't think it came from France though, because it doesn't sound like a French folk song. French folk songs aren't, because the French language has very different inflection, in that the inflection is far less important. In France, they don't care what syllable you emphasize, and in German, you really do. So it's, the tune feels like a German language shaped tune. Georgian, as in children in the country of Georgia, sing head, shoulders, knees, and toes to the same tune. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, knees and toes. I don't know what head, shoulders, knees, and toes are in Russian. Head is Kopf in German. I think it's something like the Greek killa something. In whatever. I have gotten very off topic, and I don't care. Like, that's cool. Like, let's talk about the thing. Um, but I do want to make clear that even if you have ADHD, mindfulness might be way harder, but you definitely are capable of doing a little bit. Will it be as impactful for you? It might not. Mindfulness meditation might not be a thing that helps you. In which case, I don't know how you get into creating observational distance, because I've never had to find a different way to create observational distance. It's on YouTube. Okay, great. The Emily has taken a class in transcendental meditation, and maybe that is a possibility if mindfulness meditation is not it for you. Transcendental meditation seems like it might be a better fit for ADHD because it doesn't rely on your attention or your focus. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe okay. So one of the episodes we're making next is going to be about transcendence. Experiences of transcendence can be accessed through a lot of ways. We will talk about them in the episode, but transcendental meditation might be. Twinkle Twinkle is French, according to Wikipedia, not German. I've learned a thing, according to Wikipedia. Cool. Cool. I've learned a thing. It doesn't feel like the French language in its mellifluousness, but okay. But cool, neat. It was set to music by Mozart. Yes. Mozart spoke French and Italian. He was good at languages. He was good at music. He lived in all the places. He traveled all over Europe. So very, very, very likely he heard folk songs from all around the world. Emily says transcendental meditation, which she calls TM, because saying transcendental meditation feels very pretentious. All right, so we'll talk about transcendence in probably 2 episodes away. Maybe the next episode of FSP. But anyway, that concludes this week's FSP Live. Oh, there go all the turkeys. They're just no turkeys. There they go. Hello, turkeys. That's one turkey. No, that's all I can get. It's not that flexible a setup. Oh, heavens to Betsy. Heavens to Betsy. Okay. All right. Robyn will be here. That's cool. That's good. Have fun at the conference. Great. So we are coming. There's probably we are more than halfway through Murderbot, and I have been listening to how the music shows up, so I'll be capable of talking about how the music shows up. Yes, telepathy tapes. Yes. Someone Emily knows recommended them to her, and then I listened to some, and I'm interested. It's a little, I feel like I listened to one episode and I felt like it's a little beyond my ken, but maybe if I go back and listen to them all, then I'll have more perspective. Anyway, okay. So, I'll see you next week, and we'll talk about more of the things. Until then, bye. Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. 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 Bye.